Hello, my name is Melder. I am the co-founder and creative partner at the independent creative agency called Coffee Cocoa Gunpowder, or Cocoa Gun for short. Cocoa Gun's been running for about a year and a half, and myself and my partner CK launched the agency off the back of a fairly long career in advertising in a lot of the big network ad agencies around the world in London and in Sydney. And I guess the point of that was to take all of the learnings and the insights from that long career in big agencies, all the mistakes I'd seen other people make, and the good things, the mistakes I'd made as well actually, and the good things that people had done. Take all of those learnings and pump them into the launch of a new fresh kind of ad agency. Okay, so a little bit about my journey from where I started to how I got here today, and just to go right back. I went to an all-boys Catholic school. I wasn't very good at school, didn't really get on very much with school. I didn't really like being told what to do, and I found out very early on that I didn't really believe in God or any of the religion stuff, so that was a bit of a problem for an all-boys Catholic school. I was going to say unfortunately, but I got kicked out when I was 16 of school, and that could have been a problem, but it actually was a bit of a bonus because I then started work. So I started as a junior at a design agency, and at the design agency from the age of 16 I worked at various different roles: photography assistant, junior designer, helping the suits, helping the design department, all of these different things, kind of experiencing all of these different things. And what it meant was that some friends of mine who kind of carried on at school, A-levels, and then went to university, by the time they were 21 and out of university, I'd already had kind of 5 years experience in the world of work, doing like lots of different things that helped me then go on to get into advertising. And one day when I was doing, because I used to do a lot of shoots, one day when I was doing a shoot, I was kind of setting up lights and taking down lights and getting people coffees and that kind of thing, running around. There were two guys at the shoot, who were just kind of dicking around, kind of just drinking a lot of coffee and making jokes and sort of playing football with a ball, and they didn't seem to be doing much, but they seemed to kind of be having a lot of fun. And I asked someone who they were, and someone said they're the creative team. So I said, oh, the creative, like, what do they do? And they said, oh, why don't you go and ask them? So I went and talked to these two guys and kind of asked them what they were doing on the shoot and why they were there and so on. And they told me it was their idea. They kind of written the script, and they were kind of there to oversee the ad, but the director was shooting it, so they didn't need to really do anything, just keep an eye on it, and they just seemed to be having a lot of fun. So I said, I want to do what you guys are doing, so can you help me? And fast forward a bit, those guys kind of helped me understand exactly what creative teams do, copywriters, art directors, and helped me get my first step into the ad industry. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about the two best pieces of advice I've ever received in my career. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Having a mentor is brilliant, because these two pieces of advice that I'll tell you kind of came straight from my mentor. It's a guy called Dave Trott, who is a legendary creative director in London. And sort of throughout my career, at different points in my career, he's just given me brilliant pieces of advice, and a lot of the times those bits of advice were not what I wanted to hear at the time, but on reflection were brilliant pieces of what I needed to hear. So the first one is that your difference can be your superpower. So a bit of context: when I started out in advertising, I was kind of looking around creative departments and around agencies really, and they were very kind of one-dimensional in terms of people's backgrounds, very Caucasian, middle class, university educated, all of the things that I wasn't, and that was a little bit disheartening and demotivating, and all of those things. I mentioned this to Dave, and Dave was like, what are you talking about? That's brilliant. You're totally different from everyone else in there. That gives you a massive advantage. He just kind of flipped it the other way around and kind of got me to see the things that were different about me as an advantage that I had over other people, in terms of the way that I could think, the experiences I could bring, and so on. So yeah, I would say anything that makes you different about yourself, highlight that, celebrate that, focus on it. So for example, in my case, I'm from Bangladesh, or my family's from Bangladesh, and I believe I'd love to be proved wrong on this, but I believe I'm the world's only Bangladeshi Cockney creative director. Please someone prove me wrong on that, but I've kind of dined out on that and sort of celebrated that for years, because in a joking way, but also because that really does mean that I'm bringing a completely different perspective from this creative director and this creative director and this creative director. So celebrate those differences. And then the other thing that Dave said to me was, this maybe sounds like a cliche now, so I just want to unpack it a bit. It's about thinking big. So think big, and everyone talks about big ideas and thinking bigger, and it's kind of a bit of a cliche, big cliche. But what he kind of unpacked and said to me was, particularly in advertising, the creative industries, but I think really in life, what you're doing, your campaign or your idea that you're working on, or your shoot or your script that you're writing, or whatever, your product, your idea, your business, whatever it is, no one gives a shit about that thing as much as you do. To you, you're kind of looking at it through through a telescope, and it's magnified, and every element of that thing is amazing, and you want to get everything right. But no one else gives a shit. No one else is looking at it like that. They're looking at it like with a telescope the other way around, and they've kind of got a million other things to do in their life. And the only way to get them to give a shit is to think big, is to really think big, and not just kind of what you might kind of just off the cusp think, oh, that's big. What he meant was big enough to scare you, big enough to shock you, big enough for questions to be asked in Parliament, big enough for the police to come and knock down the door and say, what's going on? Whatever you're thinking is big, multiply that times 10 and think bigger. And when it kind of absolutely scares the shit out of you and makes you feel kind of embarrassed to even think about it, then maybe your thinking is big enough. The biggest mistake I've ever made in my career is doing something just for the money. And I'll just sort of tell you what happened. This is quite a long time ago. It's about 20 years ago. I was a freelance copywriter working in kind of a bunch of the big agencies around London, but as with freelance, sometimes you get a lot of work and sometimes you don't have a lot of work. And I'd not had a bit of work for a while, and I needed the money. And a job came up for one of the big agencies, I won't mention their name, which was working on a cigarette account. And it didn't really sit well with me. It's not really something I wanted to do, but I just kind of needed the money. I went in and had a chat. I agreed to do the job. I then went to a meeting with the ad agency over at the BAT, British American Tobacco, to kind of talk with the clients about the job. Kind of felt really uneasy about it. Didn't like the clients didn't really like the vibe of the project. Didn't want to be working on it. Just kind of managed to just square it off with myself that I needed to do it. Went into the ad agency, and then on my kind of first day as I started to do the job, it wasn't a breakdown, but I just kind of, it kind of all got to my head and thought, I just cannot be doing this. This is horrendous. It's kind of evil what the project was about, and I just kind of had to get up and walk out, obviously to talk to the project manager and so on, and say that I just can't do this. I have to kind of, I'm really sorry to leave you in the lurch like this, but I just can't do it, and leave, which was kind of unprofessional. But I just knew that I couldn't live with myself if I did it. And strangely, although I kind of walked off the job on that first day, I couldn't really sleep for a couple of months thinking about it, and I thought, oh, this will kind of get out of my head after a while. This is 20 years ago that this thing happened, and to this day I kind of still think back and regret that I ever kind of agreed to do that thing. I've kind of still not managed to get it out of my mind. And in fact, I went on to do about 10 or 15 years worth of work for Quit UK with Saatchi and Iris, campaigns to help people quit smoking, which kind of you'd think in a karmic sense would sort of offset that thing, and maybe subconsciously I thought I could offset that thing, but still to this day sometimes I kind of it comes to mind, and I really regret ever doing that. So God, that was a mistake that I wish I'd never done.